Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Talk Freelance to Me podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Cisneros Mejia, and today I'm really excited to introduce you to someone that I have been really inspired by and gotten lots of reminders to incorporate more self-care into my routine, the wonderful Arlene Ambrose. How are you today, Arlene?
Hi, Ashley. I'm so good. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you. I was telling you before we started how I was reviewing your Instagram and your content about self-care, about pouring into ourselves, about giving ourselves permission to just exist as humans and not just thinking of ourselves as productivity machines has really been impactful to me. I know your background is really interesting in that you have this background in clinical nursing, and then you're also this amazing writer. Can you tell us how you first started blending those two worlds?
Yes, I've always been creative.
Mm.
And when I was first going into school, deciding what to do, I was at a crossroads between journalism and going into the healthcare field. And at the time, I didn't really have anyone specifically in my family who was creative. I was also on my own in Toronto. So I love both. I love both, but I felt like I had to go more into the healthcare field, into nursing for a stability financial
Sure.
viewpoint. But I always created here and there throughout the whole thing. And it's personally helped me with like my hard days or going to work, etc. And I didn't think it was something that I could do as work.
Mm.
And then one day I was teaching, and one of my students, I don't know how we got on the topic, but she worked at a facility that did art therapy and different types of creative therapy as part of their healthcare model. So she invited me to come. I was probably talking about something creative, and she invited me to come. And then I think for the first time, it solidified in my mind that you can do something creative that is attached to health as well, because we're whole beings, right? I got started with that art therapy. And then I took a little course on poetry therapy and just also seeing when my patients came in and they had different things that come in stress, heart attack, different things. And we would treat the clinical aspect, but talking one on one, like I knew that there's an emotional aspect as well that we don't cover at all in the healthcare setting. And I just felt that that was a gap. So I started to dive into that more and wanted to just bring the two together.
That's so interesting. So, are you doing any of the nursing anymore, or have you just moved all of your work to writing and coaching and helping people in this way?
I definitely do nursing still,
Okay.
because I love both. I
Yeah.
love both. And the way I was torn because I saw how much the medical side neglected the holistic side of things.
Mhm.
But I've always worked in the emergency room or surgery or rural and outpost. I do a bit of flight nursing. So those things I feel absolutely like if you have some catastrophe happen, you need medical care, right? Not the holistic side, but medical care. Same
Right.
thing with surgery. So in that way, I like working in those settings. I also working in rural. I go on lots of indigenous reserves here in Canada where they don't necessarily have a doctor. It's more rural, underpopulated, understaffed facilities. So I do that nursing aspect. And then on the other side, I still do my writing and workshops in that way. So I'm able to keep both.
That is so cool. And just that integration when you're talking about like whole person care or that holistic approach to care is so interesting to me because even when you look at, like I was looking at my grandmother has Alzheimer's. So I was reading the other day about, even though there's not definitive research, it seems, about like how you prevent it or how to, there's certainly no cure right now, but just thinking both from my perspective, for my mom, for myself, for my daughter, just thinking about what is it, what can we do now to try to do prevention? And I was reading about just, again, exercise, diet, all of the things that we hear about, like just the practical ways that we can try to prevent disease. And so much of it, like when I was looking at your content about just the gentle nudges and gentle encouragement to drink water and to relax and to move and just those basic things, and how much, if we gave ourselves permission to do those things, how much of the disease, like the medical stuff, we could maybe stave off or prevent entirely. Like there is such a an integration between those two things. But oftentimes, I think, depending on where you live in the world, there's such an emphasis on working, on money, on paying bills, and we like just neglect all of that self-care.
Absolutely. And so much of it is grounded in what I see. Like it's one thing, I went through a coaching program and I did the little things, started drinking. I was not taking care of myself as a health profession. I was just
Yeah.
very much a work type of person. So when I first found out about self-care, it was through somebody who coached me and doing the little changes. But then I opened my eyes more to see every day people are coming in, they're having heart attacks, they're having
Mm,
strokes, they're having mental breakdowns. And it's related to stress. It's related to stress. It's related to other things. So that was just really an eye opener for me.
that's so good. You were talking about stress as being related to some of these other issues. What are some early signs that we can look out for of stress when it's starting to, because I imagine a little bit of stress is you can't really get away from it, right? But when does it start to sabotage? When does it start to get to a level that it could be dangerous for our health?
Okay, so the first thing I want to say about stress is that stress is not bad. I often get comments and questions with saying like, how do I stop stress?
Mm,
And so the first thing I want to say is you don't want to stop stress. Stress is not a bad thing. Stress is what helps us to get up in the morning. It points our attention, it points our body and our mind to what needs our attention. So any level of activity that you do is going to cause some level of stress. It releases those hormones so you can get things done. So I think that's the first misconception. I want people to know that stress is not bad. Stress is needed.
right.
And when stress becomes a problem is when it becomes two things, which is chronic and unmanaged. So chronic stress is if you're dealing with something for a month or more repeatedly and it's getting worse, there's no end in sight. That's chronic. And unmanaged is when you're not implementing any tools to manage and heal your stress. So I would say that's the first sign. And one thing that I gathered from people replying to me, questions that I asked,
Yeah.
is that a lot of people do not know the signs of when they're stressed. So
Hmm.
they are not implementing stress prevention strategies because in their head, we are so good, like we're so good at going and dealing with things that they're not recognizing when they're stressed. And it's different for each person. So I would start with taking some time out to recognize when you're feeling different, when you're feeling stressed, what is actually happening in your mind and body, your sleep patterns, you're having increased dread and anxiety going to work and doing a project. I'm not talking about, oh, the days we just don't feel like doing something, but absolute dread, your heart palpitations, you're feeling nauseous, you're feeling sick. And like for me, what happened is that I was going through a stressful period in my life, and I started breaking out, basically
Mm.
having this like allergic reaction where I couldn't breathe. But I never attributed that to stress because it was such an odd thing. I went to the doctor, my inflammatory markers were up. This happened two separate times in my life. My face got swollen. So it's triggering that inflammatory response, which could be some people have gut issues. Some people break out. They have redness on their skin. They're like how bowel movements are different. Maybe you're
Yeah.
constipated or you have diarrhea. So that's how that shows up. So anyway, I went to the doctor, says everything is fine. I think you're just stressed. My face was a balloon and I couldn't
Mm.
believe it. And then the second time that I had like I was very stressed, like severe reaction, it was the same thing. I broke out, but couldn't breathe. And from my previous interaction, I knew that, okay, this is because of stress. And when I started just taking time to unwind and take care of myself, all of the symptoms went away. And Ashley, I was just like flabbergasted. I'm like, I can't.
Wow.
So I'm like, I am literally allergic to stress. I have to tell the world.
Yes.
So that's an extreme, those are extreme examples, but things that are happening in your health that are undiagnosed, those things could be related to stress. So whether it's like you're holding on to emotions that are not processed,
Mhm.
whether or not you're in environments that are not chronically not right for you, changes in your mood, increased forgetfulness that happened as well. I couldn't remember a lot of things because I was stressed out. So, what I would tell anybody is that take some time, get a journal, and be very intentional about tracking what is causing you to have a stress response. Changes in your mind, changes in your mood, and changes in your body.
That's so good. That's so good. And I think in many cultures, there was, and I don't know, I think in some ways after COVID or in these post-COVID years, some of it is, I just remember feeling like before COVID, when I was in my 20s and working, I remember people would come to work sick. And it was almost like a badge of honor that they like, oh, look at Ashley, she's pulling through. She's so committed. Just not listening to our bodies and almost just that ability to grit your teeth through it and get the work done was almost lauded and admired as, oh, this person's so tough or so committed to the project or so hardworking or so loyal or all of these ideas. And I think that with stress too, there's so many of us that we're just on to the next project, on to the next deliverable, on to the next work day, whatever it is. And we are not stopping to assess and reflect and say, am I okay? How am I feeling? Like, why am I now drinking two espressos a day when I used to just have one? Maybe that's an indicator. Why am I staying up at night and snacking when I really probably should be sleeping at that time? And we don't really give ourselves that space sometimes, I think, to even notice. Like we're just continuing. When I'm thinking about people in our space, freelance writers, when we're thinking about our deadlines, and a lot of times there's some, like even me included, sometimes I will get more energized. It's the procrastination, or maybe because I know the deadline is looming and that will get my butt in gear. Maybe that's the good stress that like nudges me forward. What,
Yeah.
yeah, what for writers and people like us, where that's the nature of our work is we have a hard stop at something. Something has to get done. What are some mindset shifts or daily practices that creatives can use when we feel like we're just stuck in this go mode?
So the one thing is that I think that sometimes people fear rest because they think that you're not doing anything. So productivity and rest are not necessarily opposite, but they are a different side of the same coin. You have a deadline and you talk about feeling that time where you're energized, which is stress, which is what pushes us and moves us forward. You have your deadline, you are working backwards. I love creating a Kanban board, um, especially when I have multiple. I use it mainly if I have multiple projects on the go and I need to keep track of what's going on. So, just for reference, I don't I just use sticky notes. I don't use like necessarily the physical
Sure.
board, but I would take sticky notes and I'm putting down all the tasks that I need to do. I usually just stick it on the wall. So yellow sticky notes would be like, okay, I need to get this by this date. I
Mhm.
start sticking them on, and then I will take red sticky notes. And the red ones are basically what I need to do right now. If you have a big task, you're basically just breaking it down into little steps and then doing that one or two things in the day or in the allotted time frame. So that's one thing. So just going back to what I was talking about productivity and rest being
Mhm.
the different side of a coin. So when you're productive, of course, there's times that you're going to have to work like, you know, hard and get things done. And I think that's another misconception. I think people think, oh, if I take care of myself, if I rest, it means that I'm just like laxing and missing deadlines and not doing work and sauntering around. Absolutely not. Something needs to get done. I work hard. I might have to spend hours and hours doing this project. But the thing is that you know that there is something on the other side. So one mindset shift is knowing just because you are working on this project and you're putting all of your energy and time into it is not feeling guilty because you're not resting. Like you have a deadline to meet and you want to show up in your work as best as possible. It's representation of yourself, but also knowing that on the other side of that is that time where you're going to rest. And even within the project, it might be taking just 5 or 10 minutes. There's that Pomodoro effect.
Yeah.
You're working for half an hour, then you take 5 minutes to reset. There's something called the default mode network in our brain. So we are productive, we're getting the work done. And then when we're resting, it's not that we're not doing anything. I think some people think that it's a waste of time, but even those 5, 10 minutes, that default mode network is helping you tune into your creativity, helping refresh your mind, helping you grow. So but that's what's actually happening when you're resting. So if you're just productive all the time, it's going to be harder to complete your work because there's a resistance, right? Because if you don't incorporate that rest, you're not going to get into that creative flow to put everything together. So I know I said a lot of things,
Yeah, that's so
but
helpful.
that's, what I would say. You need to meet a deadline, of course, to go for it. Don't feel guilty about it. It needs to get done, but also take those short breaks because it's resetting your mind. Get up, stretch, task switch, color for a bit, do something else, and then come back to what you need to do.
That's so good. That's so good to see it, to shift that way of looking at rest, of not having any value because you're not producing anything, or that it needs to be something that you earn, or that it's like a luxury, or I don't know, like you're being lazy. Like those are all things that I've had to take those beliefs and set aside and kind of retrain my thinking, because I feel like I don't know if it's just my culture or being in workplaces where that was celebrated, but just feeling okay, you're going to nearly kill yourself and then you deserve rest. And no, it's not. That's not the way that we should be looking at that. So thank you for that correction. I know you do a lot. You do your nursing things, you write, I know you teach, you help people. Can you talk about more about kind of the ways that you structure your business, those different offerings? And then what advice would you give to other freelancers who are listening to this who might want to do something education related with whatever their niche is?
So, first of all, take from experience. You can't do everything at once. Something
That's
is
good.
definitely going to suffer. So I do a variety of different things, and it's more also as not, I know not everything is going to be fruitful the same way. That's also me checking for what feel most aligned, what works for me, and whittling it down. So for someone who is starting their business or going into freelancing, you might cast a wide net at the beginning because you're trying to identify the thing that you like, maybe the thing that comes easy and most effortless to you. And then there's also the thing that is going to make you money. And they don't have to be the same thing. They're not necessarily the same thing. And what I found when I first started, I was writing, I was coaching, and I was working with a mentor. And I found that trying to turn everything into income didn't work for me. It just didn't feel aligned. Some things I wanted to do because I just wanted to get a message out there to create and to build a community. And then there was another aspect where I was less attached to the thing creatively and it was more of, okay, this is what brings an income or yields
Mhm.
the most things. So the first thing I would say is to separate those two. And it's perfectly okay. Like in my eyes, what helped me is still having the nursing, like going, still, I work as a contract nurse. It's still independent in a way. So I'm making my own schedule and dealing with my finances and stuff like that. But it's more of a concrete source of income. and then having different pockets as adjacent. So really being able to separate those things for yourself. So my strategy is that I always ask myself, what are the things that you come back to? I've tried a
Mm.
lot of different things, and I ask myself that over and over again. What is the thing you come back to? What is the thing that you come back to? What is the thing that's most viable? And it's always writing, and it's always healthcare, like some aspect of health. So those are the two things. And just niching that down, because again, I've tried doing everything, it doesn't work. What I've done is, so for example, I started writing on Medium. I have my Instagram creating content. I use those as community building and visibility strategies. And so what happens is I'll have people finding my article online. I will link below. This is my Instagram, and this is where to find me, which is my newsletter. You have to have one goal. When
Mm.
I initially started and I was like working with a mentor, and I was like, I don't know, I'm doing so many things that I
Yeah.
don't know what my end goal is. And if you don't want to create busy work, right? Where you could be
Mhm.
doing a lot of things, but not getting anywhere and not getting anything done, just exhausting yourself for no reason. I've done that. So you have to be intentional. And working with this mentor, she said, you just have, this is when I was coaching, she said, you just have one goal to get people on the phone with you, to get people on your mailing list, get people on the phone with you. Everything you do leads back to that one goal. So that's what I would tell um, anyone who's freelancing and they're doing a variety of different things. What is your one goal? And there are two sides to that. One, I believe, should be in regards to your client, which is you're working with clients and you're getting income or having some source that way. That's one. And the second part should be your personal brand, because what happens is that client might not be around or will not be around
Right.
forever. So I've learned not to just solely rely on getting things and work from this one client or these few clients, but you also need to work on your personal brand where people find you. You're not necessarily looking out all the time, but people can find you for your services. So that is that part where you're doing other things. So I'm jumping around, but back to writing on mediums, people will message me on Instagram. I had a girl message me a few days ago and she said, "Hey, I found your article on Medium." And then I went down the rabbit hole and
Wow.
I signed up for your newsletter. And then so now I'm on Instagram. So everything you're in charge of funneling people where you want them to go. So when you're putting links in your bio or wherever, you want it to be as seamless as possible. You don't really want to send people to 50,000 different places. You
Right.
want to send them to where you want to send them. So those two things are my Instagram because I'm able to interact and it gives me an idea of what people are searching for. My audience is very niche of women looking for self-care and for rest. So then you do have that audience. Should you decide that you want to do a workshop later or a digital download or a brand comes to you and they're like, "Hey, we noticed that you have this audience of engaged people. We want to work with
Yeah.
you for this." So that is my strategy, which is twofold, that building my brand audience and a group of people that, and going back to you don't necessarily have to sell, be trying to sell to everybody all the
Sure.
time. I want to create that authenticity of people who value my work, my words, so that they will essentially, whatever you decide to do, whatever project, they're with you along the way. And then the second half is the actual work, like pitching different article ideas. I did a workshop, I did a speaking engagement on stress management from somebody who just found me on Instagram from a post.
Wow.
So those are some of the ways that I find work as well, is you don't know who is watching. So even
Mhm.
though people are not necessarily interacting with you, saying anything, they're there watching. You
Yes.
don't know when will be the day that someone's, hey, I need you to do a talk, or I need you to write this article for me, or whatever.
Beautiful. I love that advice. I think that's so important because a lot of times we get into this mindset of putting the client first, which is great. You want to honor that client, appreciate that client, do your best work for the client, think about ways that you can really help them achieve their goals, but not neglecting ourselves. That I feel like that's a theme, just not neglecting ourselves in our own self-care, not neglecting ourselves in relation to our business and our personal brand, and understanding that we have to still have our own, our own thing going aside from the clients when they need us. So I appreciate that. I noticed that you also talk about seasonality, both in business and in health. And that's something that really speaks to me too. I think this summer, my kids are getting out of school here in Florida. And this is the first year that I'm giving myself permission to scale back a little bit while they're home, because in previous years I would continue forging ahead like nothing had changed, and then I'd get frustrated. They'd get mad because I'm snapping at them to be quiet while I'm on the phone. And I'm just thinking, why am I working against the tide? Why am I not working with the waves? And I love when you were talking about seasons. Can you talk more about that, about how you incorporate that idea, how we might be able to do it to avoid burnout?
Yes. So the first thing I want to say is that get this book. Everyone read this book. It's called
Okay.
Slow Productivity by Carl Newport.
Okay.
And it talks about that, how, and I've experienced this, where if you can have focused time, uninterrupted time, maybe it's like for 3 months, and then you write a whole book in that
Yeah.
time. You create so many things in that short time. And I've experienced this where I've been really focused and undistracted. And even in my newsletter, I've I wrote like a year's worth of newsletter in that time, and I scheduled them. I When I'm in that time, my posts, for example, I'll write 3 months worth of content in that time, and I will schedule them. I'm a big proponent on scheduling ahead. So when you see something come out, it's not because I'm writing it right now. It's because during that seasonal time, I would have created a lot of things. So then when I am ready to go now to the next project, I'm writing an article, I have to meet the deadline. I'm really only working on that. Everything else is running in the background because during that previous season, I covered enough.
Yeah.
And then, when this article, this deadline, this project is done, then I'm looking ahead at what is next. And I talked about before about busy work. Just because you're doing lots of work doesn't mean that you're getting lots of work done. So it's much better to be intentional about what you are doing versus trying to do everything at once. There's another book called The One Thing.
Mm.
Who is it by? Oh, by Gary Keller. And same concept. Talks about you really can only do one thing at a time. So this idea that, of multitasking and doing a bunch of things, like, yes, you're getting it done, but your mind is scattered and you're getting it done slowly. But if you do one thing, get it done, and then do the other thing and get it done, when all your focus and attention is on it, you're actually getting more done. And then you can rest for the rest, for more time. I want to give an example of
Yeah.
is that I was on a contract. This is a nursing contract. And so these usually I'll do 2 or 3 months at a time. I'll do a contract and then maybe I'll go to a writing assignment. So this is the seasonality of things. And I decided to get busy again. And I was like, oh, maybe I can. So this is in Canada. And I decided, like, I'm going to start going to New York and travel nursing there.
Oh,
And
cool.
so I started that and I basically forced that to happen, I think, before its time. And it was busy work and I did it, but I ended up spending so much time and money and energy during that time. So it ended up costing me. It ended up costing me energy. It ended up costing me money. So I didn't make anything. I actually lost. And then I
Mm.
came back and I was absolutely exhausted. And I had less money than before. And I was like, I can't believe it.
Yeah.
I just did so much work and I didn't really get anywhere. And I could have stayed in this spot because I was getting, especially as a freelancer or a contract worker, your work is not steady, right? You're always in the back of your mind, you're always thinking of the next thing.
Yes.
Where is that income going to come from? So I jumped ahead and I got a little bit frantic and I did that, but I ended up losing, right? And I sat back and I said, wow, like I could have stayed here, gone slow and steady. Maybe I would have been out of work for a month or so or not have things coming in, but I still would have been in a better position than doing all of that busyness that I was doing. So that's just another example of seasonality. You really do have to plan, look at your year, look at the things that are coming up, look at, you talk about your kids coming home, being home from school. And it's like when planning, you know that, okay, this is going to happen. So you
Yeah.
start planning for it. Okay, so from January to however long, I'm going to go hard working, getting projects, going above and beyond. That's okay. I think, again, when we talk about rest, people think that you can't work hard, which is not the case, right? You work hard in seasons when you need to, absolutely. So you go hard during that time and okay, yeah, I have these 3 months or whatever where maybe I'm going to take on a different project or it's going to look different or I might have a less income. So I have to plan from before and go from there. So that's what seasonality is. It's planning, it's being very intentional, it's knowing that just because you're working less doesn't mean that you're producing less, which is another misconception. It's much it's much better to work focused and intentional and getting the work done than just doing a whole lot of I don't want to say nothing, but things that don't yield as much.
Yes. So good. Those reminders are so good because I think there's so much noise too, where we're thinking maybe we're not necessarily even trying to keep up with the Joneses, but we're just aware of what the Joneses are doing and what other people are doing. And so maybe we're thinking, oh, this writer is hosting a writer retreat. I guess I should host a write. That might not be what's for our business, what our goal is. It may not be even what we want to do. And so being just more aware of what is our goal again. I love how you highlighted with your mentor, it was the email signups and like that was the metric. And so if it's not helping you achieve that specific goal, then we can set it aside. Maybe it's a nice idea, maybe it's even interesting, but maybe it's not for right now. So that is such a good reminder. I think we all need.
Like you have to, like literally every day, I'm asking myself, okay, what is the end goal? And what I ask myself this very often, what can I get rid of? I'm always looking to
Mm,
get rid of something in my schedule because it needs to be very intentional. So I always ask myself, okay, I'm doing this project. I'm going to work on this, but why? Like,
mm,
is it necessary? No,
yeah,
not so. And there's some like FOMO, I guess. Like you talked about, there's some FOMO. You're like, oh, people are doing this,
yeah,
but really, it's a mindset shift saying that you can do that, but you don't have to do everything all at once. And you're also on a different path and on a different step than somebody else. You have a different capacity. And so you have to work within your framework and you can do everything that you want to, but maybe not all at once.
yeah. That's so good. That's so good. I think we need it. We need those reminders because I think, especially sometimes in the world of freelance, I feel like there's been so many conversations about everything about the sky is falling because of what's happening with the economy or AI and it's stealing our jobs and we're all going to be erased and all of these things. And sometimes we just have to really turn all of that off, turn all of the noise off, and ask ourselves, am I well, how do I even feel about this? What do I even want? Because sometimes those other ideas of what we should do or what other people are doing, they get in our mind and take us off track. And then, like you said, we get caught up in the work that we're doing. So it feels like we're moving, but yet maybe we're just treading water. We're not getting anywhere at all.
At
Like,
all.
certainly, yeah, just doing little circles. I love that. And even your space, your Instagram, I feel like there's a through line of your faith, of your personal faith. And it's such a refreshing place because it doesn't feel, I don't see the scarcity feeling. I think some freelance spaces, it's very much of, yeah, fear-based. Like maybe there won't be enough, or we won't have enough time, or we won't have it. And it's like, we really need to unsubscribe from those ideas because it's not helping us. Can you talk about that, about how your faith might play a role or just in your belief in yourself and in what God has for you and what the positive things that will come to be?
Absolutely. I gave this example of stepping into this fear and then going to New York on this contract and then it costing me more. So I've seen time and time again that a way is provided for me personally. And there are times where, especially with this work where we're contracting and freelancing, anxiety can be quite high. And it's this talk of one, I've never been let down by God. That's who I believe in my faith, right?
Yeah.
Even times where I've been out of work for months, just when I'm like, oh, I'm gonna be on the street. This is my life. Of course, I'm not going to be, but like your mind's,
Yeah.
and I think I come from an immigrant family. I'm the eldest daughter.
Oh,
I don't have as much capacity of not having not having my next step and not I'm like I need to
yes.
people are relying on me. I don't have
Yeah.
time to play around. So there's also that. But I've never had an issue. Like I might be out of work, but even that, I'm not really out of work. Like when I think about it, I couldn't go and do something else. Like you really, I could, if you think of even something that you could do, like you could maybe apply to a physical job, even though you might not
Sure.
want, or so a lot of it is too in our head. Something's always pulled through, and it's not always, sometimes it's people finding me. And I do believe that is a faith thing where you beat the odds where you're like, hey, I don't know if I'm qualified for this job, or I feel like this is a little bit out of my reach. And then I've had people say, I'm gonna, yeah, like no, I still want you to come and do this project, or I still want you to do this work. And I do think that is based on faith for me. And also, I think your personality and your characters, like you just connect with some people
Yeah.
and they don't know why. And they're just like, I just have a feeling. And there's a lot of that as well.
As you were speaking, I was thinking about your Instagram community and how you were talking about that. You create like this space where you're sharing this message that you feel like you want to express, you want to get out into the world. And when those, and you created this following of people who they might feel like they actually know you, even though they may have not have met you ever in real life yet. But when you do have an offering, I'm sure that they're like, yep, it's like a no question process where they're like, whatever Arlene is having, if it's a workshop or some kind of offering, they probably are already 95% of the way bought in because you've created that content. They see what you're about. They trust you. They like you. They feel that comfort. So I definitely could see how that works too.
Absolutely. And you know, the other aspect of that is when you do have your list, sometimes I do get people messaging me saying, hey, when are you going to create a next workshop? Or
Wow.
are you going to create a workshop on XYZ? They'll tell me the topic. And I always find that very interesting because again, going back to seasons, sometimes I'm not in the space where I'm able to host a workshop right now or upcoming. But I know that, and I know I've said this already, but you don't know who is watching. People sometimes, when people are not responding, and then there was a time where I had a different Instagram. I was writing, and then you feel, I'm like, nobody is reading this, nobody is, and you get rid of everything. And people notice when you're missing.
Wow.
And so you just keep that in mind, even if it's just one person. Yeah.
So good. This is so good, Arlene. Thank you so much for all the wisdom and these beautiful reminders that I think that we really need. We're coming into the middle of the year now, and I can't even believe that. But just good reminders for us to take into consideration and just how we approach our work and our life. Where can people keep up with you, learn more about your work, and what can we look forward? What are you working on? Is there something that we should stay tuned for in your world?
Yes. So on socials, you can find me most active on Instagram at the Arlene Ambrose. You can also sign up for my newsletter. All the links are on my website, arleneambrose.ca. You'll find the links. And what I'm working on next, I would love to create a book, another, I would love to create a
Yes.
best-selling book.
Yes.
I think my writing perspective is a little bit different. I I pitch and I create and I send different articles to publications and stuff. But I do have this poetic type of
Yeah.
writing that's not really structured, doesn't fit in anywhere. And so I would like to create create my own thing. So that's what I am working on.
That's super exciting. So everybody go and follow Arlene so you can be notified when this beautiful work is available. Thank you again, Arlene, for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.